Hey guys, I am back for a little bit, and it's going to be kind of a current state and a whole bunch of projects that are be coming up. Uh, Quite a few projects, mechanical in nature, not so much body work in nature, that is coming. But kind of right now, is I've got the body to the point where it's like it's mostly there in the rough state, but there's a lot of mechanical things that I need to do, and I'm really bad about it. If this thing was all nice and painted, I would destroy paint, primer, and just make a mess of it and make even more work for myself. Um, so I've got a whole pile of stuff over here I'm going to talk about. And as you can see, I have been putting stuff on the car because I'm kind of going through and digging stuff out. And I got to see what I have. Um, One of the things I did find out is that I don't have the right bumper brackets. I should have known better, but I didn't. Let's go over there and take a look at that. And if you kind of take a look, there is that kind of sticks out a little far, and there's this extra funny little bracket here. I don't even think this one is right. I know that one over there is right on the outside. I know this one's right because that's a brand new one. Yeah, these inner brackets are, 67, 68 brackets. I should have known that when I had them in my hand because they've got this extra little bracket back here. Otherwise, they look identical to the, 5.6s, yeah, other than the size, but So, some idiot didn't realize that when they did that. And I painted these things, oh, early mid 90s. I painted those things back before this car was mine. So for now, you can see everything is totally misaligned. Yeah, that's horrendously bad. That's horrendously bad. This hood is sitting like this right now. These I actually picked these up from the same guy that I got the my leaf springs from, and these are not perfect, but they're far better than the ones I have. At least I can get these in here, use them for sizing, use them for. I mean, I could make I technically I could make these work, but I would much like to replace them because, you're missing a lot of stuff here. But I don't know if in those of you that are familiar with it, you'll see something here that you don't like. But we'll talk about that another time. But as you can see, I just kind of threw everything on the car. I threw the doors on there. I've got my nice magnetic door strikers. Holds the doors closed. Really handy. But I just kind of threw the doors on for right now and just digging through. And somebody, when they undercoated the bottom of the car, totally forgot to put those on the car. So somebody's got to, I will use a seam sealer and actually kind of put these into place and then screw them into place. Just so you know, these little drain plugs here, we always talk about which way they go. Well, in this car, they were actually the other way with this thing going up. I don't like it that way. I prefer it this way. So that's why I'm putting it in. So as you can see that there's more stuff to do. Around the back of the car. Now, since it's off of the rotisserie and it is now, yeah, it's kind of dark back here. I don't have much lighting. You can see that big section there under the tail panel that did not get stripped and primed, as well as this here, because my rotisserie went here and across. So this has got to get stripped and primed, and I have a new attachment for the Bauer surface conditioning tool that's going to make that a little bit easier. And let's see, we come back over here in this part of the shop. This is where all the interesting stuff is, and I'm going to put you guys up on this little pedestal right here. And I'm going to set you down here, and I'm going to put my phone over here so I can get an idea of, see if I'm in frame somewhat, which you probably don't want anyway. But okay, so that's good enough. Now, as you can see, I've got a rear end here. That's one of many things I'm working on. I picked this one up, and I had a poll. It said 327, 355, or 373 on the gearing. Last I checked, I think pretty much everybody was picking 355. Well, when I went to the junkyard to find one of these things, 355, hard to find. 327, hard to find. Anything, to be honest, anything other than 373. On these Explorers, this is a 95-201, I believe, Explorer rear end. I believe it's 9501 that has the disc brakes because you don't want drums. If you're going to do this, then you go all out and do the drums, make your life a lot easier. Um, but when I went through and looked at them, everything was a 373. Was Now the ones that were lockers, half and half were lockers. About half were lockers, half the other weren't. Um, Now, for those of you familiar with this, if you have a 67, 68, you can basically take this rear end and weld spring perches on it and whatever else you want to need to do on there at the time, and put this in the car. It'll fit, it'll work. Your drive shaft will be slightly canted over to the side. Who cares? Work fine in the Explorer as long as your angles are even. If you understand driveline angles, you can. It's not an issue. It could be an issue with some exhaust systems, and if you lower the car a bunch, that the drive shaft can actually come over and possibly hit the floor pan, which you can use a fine adjustment tool to clearance that. But on the 65 and 66, this thing's too wide. Now, there is a short axle over here, and there is a long axle over here. So, as well as most of you know, I think the vast majority of you have heard of this, seen this, because everybody and their brother does this to these things. You will go and get another axle from the inside here, from the short one, and you will take this tube, and one of many ways you can do it, make this, I believe it's inch and 7/8 shorter. Make this inch and 7/8 shorter, and then you put the short axle over there, and now you've got a narrowed rear end that fits in the 65, 66, blah, 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 blah. Disc brakes, locking differential if you have it, and so on and so forth. Now, we get on to the gear ratio issue I was talking about earlier. This is probably not the rear end that's going in the car. I got this rear end for a little bit more, probably $20 more than what it would have cost me to go to a junkyard, pull a rear end, go to a junkyard and just pull the axle by itself. So, I got a good deal on the entire rear end for that. And this one actually has 355 gears, but it is not a posi, locking differential, whatever you want to call it that day of the week. It is not one of those. That's why it was the price it was. And you can see the dust shields and stuff on this are kind of beat up. It's like, that didn't matter. I got an axle that I needed, essentially, with a whole rear end attached with all the other parts I need. So this one will get shortened. I will go to the junkyard and grab a 373 locking unit as well. That one will get shortened. And then the idea is eventually, I'll have both of them shortened, and I'll probably actually put the 373 in the car. If I don't like the 373 and I find out it's just too steep, I'll take that out of the car, and then I will take the locking differential and swap it out with the open one in here, and then I'll put this rear end in the car. And the reason I say that is, if I just change out the differential part, and I've done this many times, I've done it a bunch of times at GM. Ford, I haven't done that many times, but on GM cars, you can swap. As long as they're factory carriers, I've swapped out opens for posis, never touch the gears, never touch the alignment, throw it back together. It's perfect. It works fine. I'm just going to assume that Ford does the same thing. Then they're all, manufactured the same and, within the same tolerances and just work. Assume. So that's the idea, is if I do want to make this one, put the 355 in the car. So there will be an entire video or 2 or 3 or 4, or however long it takes me, and whatever method I decide to shorten this on with. Now, there's a couple methods. One, you can cut it. One, you can pull it. One, you can blah, 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 blah. Put a pipe over, cut it, put it together, weld it up, put a pipe over it, weld that. There's so many methods to do it. Ideally, I'd have one of those, those cold cut saws, to do a cold cut saw on it. I could just set it up, clamp it all into place, and do that cold cut saw, and it would just do a nice, perfect cut. And I could do one cut, do another cut, bevel them, get everything aligned back up, weld it up together, call it a day, and I'm done. Uh, that machine is a great tool out of my price range for what I'm going to do. There is if you're familiar with Vivor, they sell lots of stuff. They have a version now that is more affordable. I'm still not going to buy that one, but at least at least there is something else on the market, and there's, a little more affordable. For guys working out there, when you're in your home shop, some of the high end ones. I mean, it's a great tool, awesome tool. And the name escapes me right now, but. Yeah, name totally saves me. Mind block. I'm good at that. Excellent tool. It's just out of the price range for the home shop. For especially I don't do a whole lot of metalworking, so it doesn't make sense to buy that. And the Beaver one, it'd do. I'd probably be fine, happy with it. We'll see. We'll see what happens when I get to that point, but that is going to be one of the projects here. Now, as you see, I got other stuff. Now, I did a video a while back on Barry's live stream. There was somebody that asked a question about, how the wiper motor went into under the dash, because when everything's in the dash, you can't see it. I get it. It's difficult. So I had the car in the rotisserie, had everything stripped out, and I did kind of an impromptu video of just showing where it is and where the bolts are and so on and so forth. And I mentioned that you could use the later Ford pickup motor, and then you can use the switch, and you can add delay wipers and do all that stuff on the 5.6 Mustangs and 7.8s. I think there's some differences with the switch or something. Yeah, the switch is different because it's a totally different switch, but it can be done. Now, I did some searching. Getting a remanufactured motor for those trucks is kind of pricey. Finding one in a junkyard, they don't exist in junkyards here anymore. I haven't seen one in a junkyard in 20 years. They just don't exist. They're all in the hands of somebody. And then you need the switch. And when you start looking at just online and say, okay, I need a motor. Well, that's 75, 80 bucks for the wiper motor. You need a switch. Those things are 30, 40, $80. You start adding that up. It's like, yeah, you can do that. Doesn't, if you have access to it, great, go with that. But I'm going to go a different route, and I've been looking online and in the junkyards when I was there at different wiper motors, and there's a whole bunch of generic motors out there, and looking at whether 2-speed, intermittent, and I've ruled it down to there's probably a GM or a Chrysler wiper motor that I like. That's roughly the same. I think it's a little bit bigger. They're all a little bit bigger, but they're more powerful. They're faster. It's like the $6 million man. So the idea is to take one of those newer, more modern motors, and then I've got to figure out. I've got a plan on what delay module I would like to use, and I've just now have to narrow it down to a switch that will work in the car. That is a off-the-shelf switch. I don't want something. I want something you just buy at a parts store or something you buy online for a reasonable price, and the drill. I want to be able to make this where it's something readily available, relatively affordable, and something you could relatively easily throw together. And I mean, it wouldn't be hard to make a kit for it. I have not looked into. I'm assuming somebody does kits for them to upgrade it, like wiper, window motors and stuff. I don't know. Have not looked into it, but that's a project in a couple of videos I've got to work on. I got to do some more research, figure out what parts I want to use on that. And now over here, yes, I'm rambling on for quite some time. We've got our steering gear. Okay, well, this is actually a 65 steering gear, which is technically, supposedly from what the numbers say, is like, so I think it's actually like a 64 and a half. So for whatever that means, but this is a power steering one, so this is a little better ratio. It's a little quicker ratio to start with. And we all know that the power steering that these Mustangs came with kind of an afterthought. It was like, oh hey, here's steering. Yeah, let's add this little doohickey and thing, and yeah, it was an afterthought. It really was, and it was kind of a generic thing. Just like, hey, we could just mount this on everything instead of coming out with actual steering gear that was power steering. I get it from a cost cutting, at the time. I get it. That was a lot of that going on at the time in the design, so I understand. But there are kits, and I do know the kits, and I have looked at a few of adding electric power steering to it. And so I have this little guy. This is out of a Nissan Versa, and this is heavier than you think it is. And there are a number of these electric ones that you can use. You can use the Nissan ones, you can use Toyotas, the Kia ones as well. The Kia ones were actually slightly, I didn't pull this. Actually, a friend of mine up in Pennsylvania pulled it for me, sent it to me. I really appreciate that, because when I buy these things at the yards here, our yards are expensive. Our cars are rust free. We have lots of cars in the junk yards, but our prices are high on used parts. So you know how that goes. But there is a Kia version as well that is a little easier to find in some parts of the country, and it is a much larger, much heavier duty. It's kind of a beast of a overkill of a steering gear, especially for this car, because this car doesn't weigh much, and this is already pretty heavy. But you can see this is going to be an interesting project. And you've got this will mount up underneath the dash, and this will be cut off here and it'll be mounted, and then I'll do some kind of, I have to do a different flex shaft down there. Maybe I could do some kind of a little bit of a collapsible, but at least if there are a couple of U-joints, at least you have some sort of movement versus this long spear thing that's just, doesn't give at all. That's probably why they made the steering wheel so big back then, so it was when it hits you, it spread the load out all over everything. And in addition to this little motor and this little thing here's the little computer that runs it. This is mounted up under the dash. It looks like it's possibly 10 gauge wire. I'll have to see if it's marked. Being a Nissan, it's going to remind me of Chrysler, where things just don't get marked wiring wise, so it may or may not be. And when I do this project, I'll put in links in the doogly-doo, because there's a guy that did all the research on this, and he deserves all the credit for doing all these and picking out the different ones and what years, and did a great job doing it. He's posted them on a bunch of forums. So when I do the video on this whole thing here, I will have a link to his information there, because he did a great job of doing all the research for the rest of us, which, you always got to appreciate that. So as you can see, I've got a lot of stuff mechanical wise to work on, and some of these things I kind of need to do, like the steering. I need to do that before a lot of things are painted, because I might have to grind something. I might have to do something like that to get in there and change things. That said, I want to paint the dash and I want to paint the interior. I just want to. So I might just, decide to just do that one day. If I screw it up, I mess it up, I'll paint it again. I just have that urge that I want to get that painted. It looks like progress. The drill. It looks like something's finished for a change. So I got all the projects going. If you've got any thoughts or any questions on any of those, let me know. Or any comments, maybe do something different. Who knows? But that's pretty much all I've got. It's just a whole bunch of rambling in this episode. So yes, I'm back for a while. Misery season ended about the 1st of October, because we were still 90s, 100 degrees till right at the 1st of October. And so basically in the past 2 weeks, we've gone from 100 degrees to, it was 48 degrees this morning. So our temperature goes, there's not a whole lot of middle time in there. We'll get a few days here and there where it's going to jump back up into, low 90s towards the end of the week. But it just, there's nothing predictable about our weather. So you never know one day to the next, is it going to be hot today or is it going to be cold today? You just don't know. So yeah, it's getting better. There's a mini split on the wall over here. Uh, that'll be talked about in another video. That's a big long subject on would you do it, why would you do it, where should you do it, and so on and so forth. So I'll leave you with a little view of the car. And that's looking more like a car now. And immediately after this, I'll have a few pictures up of a friend's car that comes from, I get it, this country right here. From that flag right there. He's on one of the islands there. And he just had his car redone. And I just thought it was kind of cool. And I thought, put a few pictures up of it.